Welcome to IT Hour on KMET 1490.
Hello and welcome to IT Hour, a popular show where we focus on best practices for a better IT experience. And we're back with Brad McDermith and Matt Creed, your hosts for the day. It's Wednesday and we're back on KMET 1490 AM. And today we're going to process some topics, the latest ransomware attacks involving Kaseya, and cyber terrorism, who's responsible, and other IT news items. So Matt, welcome back. Thanks again for joining us to process. Man, it seems like only a week's gone by and we've had like a month of news items. So the big one in the news that was actually happening right as we were pre-recording the show last week was the Kaseya VSA attack.
Yeah, essentially in between takes, I had gotten a text that was like, oh, this is blowing up, and it was pretty crazy. And it is nuts to think about the fact that it's only been a week and there is about a month worth of news. I just went on Google before the show just to see, what are the most recent companies that have been hit? And there were probably 6 or 7 different large companies in the last 24 hours that were reported. It was nuts.
Yeah, it's amazing what's going on in the cyber landscape right now. So we're gonna hit all of that. So let's start with the Kaseya VSA update. So beginning around midday on Friday, July 2nd, Kaseya's incident response team learned of a potential security incident involving their VSA software. So let's define kind of all of this. So Kaseya has a remote management and monitoring platform. Most of their customers are on their SaaS platform, they're on their cloud platform, but they have a legacy on-prem platform called VSA.
Yeah.
And they only had, I think, about 150 companies on that. And then those 150 companies had about 1,500 customers or so, the way I understand it. And those are the ones we're talking about that had this vulnerability that was discovered, it got published, and then it got compromised. And then so that's what got hit in the news here on Friday. And then Kaseya was able to make this public, and then that's all anybody's been talking about ever since. So can you color this in a little bit for us?
Yeah, of course. One of their high confidence level is that it was triggered by an authentication bypass vulnerability in their web interface for the VSA. Like you said, their software as a service stuff didn't get affected. Their cloud-based stuff, it's all on-prem. But essentially what had happened is with those VSA devices, they manage everything that's within them. So they have patch management, AV management, all that stuff. So the big thing, what they did was once they got in, they had taken their ransomware software that they disguised as a patch, essentially, and said, push this out to everything. And the thing is, if you're in the VSA, they question nothing. You're in the VSA. There's no authentication that needs to be needed at that point, and it just shot that patch out to everybody. And then after that, it just snowballed completely. And it's like you said, there's not that many companies that are still using that platform because typically you're going SaaS or cloud-based, but they had said originally, only like 40 on-prem clients got hit, nothing too bad, and then all of a sudden it became, it was more like 50 on-prem clients, 60, no, it's 60 MSPs, and then they had a couple hundred clients, and then now all of a sudden it's 60 some odd MSPs get hit, 1,500 clients get affected. It's been pretty bad.
Right. So, and let's also be clear that this really is not just limited to managed service providers. It's internal IT departments. It's anybody using this tool set.
Oh yeah.
And so when we talk about pretty much any of the tools that we usually talk about, this is used by any IT people. This is internal IT departments. This is consultants. This is managed service providers. This is pretty much our industry across the board. And this is an attack on our industry across the board, our community.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot to this. And as we go through the next two segments, we're going to talk about the people that are responsible for this. We're going to talk about our national response. We're going to really do a deep dive on this all the way through. So, because this is a little bit of a change. You know, we talked about over the last several shows, we've talked about ransomware, really how it's evolved. You know, a few years ago, ransomware was all about hitting the low-hanging fruit, getting to small to mid-sized companies, making the ransoms low, but making this a very low-value target and just about making money. And so making the ransoms low and getting it out there, but not getting high-value targets and not hitting the provider limit. But so then it went to high-value targets, and now it's taken a whole turn altogether in getting the tools that providers and internal IT departments are using. So we're seeing a change in strategy. We're seeing the change in strategy to ransomware as a service, to where now the ransomware product is out there and anyone can go out there and push it and use it and just pay for it, which made the proliferation of it driven exponentially. And now we're seeing it targeting the tools that help manage IT. So again, an exponential proliferation. And then we've seen high value targets that have large ransoms. And now, what is the ransom on Kaseya?
The Kaseya ransom, there's a couple different ones. People have reported from the individual level when they're infected anywhere from 45 grand up to 5 million. And that's just for the individual. The company that, or to say company, the sad part is they almost are a company at this point, the way that they look at it, came out publicly and said that they would release a completely public decryption key for everybody for 70 million. There's been private talks apparently where it's been lowered down to 50 million, but that hasn't been paid. The lower end companies are already cooperating with them. So, I mean, even if we wind up paying the 50 million or whatever it winds up being for the public key, they still made money off of the lower end too. And I mean, just to show one of the quotes that they came out publicly and said, they said, "It's just a business. We absolutely do not care about you and your deals except getting benefits. If we do not do our work and liabilities, nobody will not cooperate with us. It's not in our interests. If you will not cooperate with our service," which is crazy to think that it's a service, "for us, it does not matter. But you will lose your time and data because we just have the private key. In practice, time is much more valuable than money." They don't care about anything that happens to these companies. They're selling a service, and they just want their money.
Do you remember Dirty Harry in the movie where they were reading the ransom all around the table with the mayor?
Yeah.
This feels like this is exactly what we're doing.
It's pretty spot on.
And, you know, the government told us right in the CISA documentation that they just released, don't pay the ransoms. Then it's interesting that several government agencies have been hit and they are in the exact same position and they may be having to pay the ransoms.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about in another segment what we think about what the government's doing and discussing that, and are they even doing the right things, and are they slow walking some of this? And because you know, now at this point that's part of the discussion, even though I think from an IT perspective, you know, we really only have to talk about our defense and what we actually have control over. So, well, I think that's kind of a good segue into, well, let's talk about who's responsible behind this. So Revil, REVIL, they capitalize the R and the E. They're the ones behind this, and they've been behind quite a bit. They are also behind the JBS meet and several others here. And I think JBS, they asked for 11 million.
Yeah.
And they're also the ransomware as a service creator of several products that they sell and get a cut of.
Yeah, their name's actually pronounced R evil. It's ransomware evil, even though evil's not spelled like what you would think, but they are pretty evil for what it's worth, and I'm sure they're reveling in their success, unfortunately for us. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, and I'm glad you clarified that, because one of the things that I like is they really pose themselves as in the past, one of the notes have come across with, we're actually doing you a service.
Oh, yeah.
We have found a security vulnerability, and we're just charging you to let you know and fixing it. And then later they've come across as, hey, this is just business. We found this, you fix it, and you give us the money. These people are also kind of saying, hey, this is just business, but they've given themselves a name with evil in it.
Yeah.
and I don't know, maybe evil means something different in Russian.
Yeah.
But so this is kind of interesting. So what all do people need to know about ransomware evil? This is a hacking group that has extorted hundreds of companies in a minute or less. And so they're one of the most notorious and ambitious hacking groups today. And they've launched attacks against hundreds of companies worldwide, often demanding and receiving millions from its victims. And so most recently, obviously, they've attacked Kaseya VSA, and then also forced JBS, the meat processor, to pay an $11 million ransom to regain control of its operations. So our evil is likely a Russia-based ransomware group. It's code written to bypass computers that use Russian. This is a common strategy to avoid running afoul of local authorities. And so it's interesting. Here's where the ransomware as a service comes in. They sell their technology to other hackers in exchange for a 20% cut of the ransomware payment elicited by the third-party groups. And so this is where they were sort of part and parcel to the whole change in the architecture of the business. And this is where, hey, you're over in Russia and you're entrepreneurial, but you don't have the coding resources to build the product. You just go to our evil and you get the product, you send it out, and in your next fiscal year, you get $1 million of ransoms, and you just send them $200,000, and you guys work as partners. And so
feels like a pyramid scheme.
Well, yeah, it really is. It's multi-level marketing. Yeah, it's multi-level marketing.
The one that goes in a triangle.
Yeah, exactly. And they're just renaming it. So, they are originally the creators. The R Evil's creators are linked to the architects of G and Crab ransomware, which is first used in 2018, primarily to attack healthcare firms. And one of the first signs of ransomware evil was a 2019 attack that struck 22 Texas towns and demanded a collective ransomware of $2.5 million. So that's where they first came onto the scene. And so one of the things we have to talk about is this, what about us? What about California Computer Options? What about all of the firms that aren't hit? Is everybody shaking in their boots over their tool sets? And the answer is no. This is not all lost hope for those of us with a multi-layered approach. And actually, we kind of gave our answer a couple weeks ago. And so let's discuss that right now. When you have a multi-layered approach, we're kind of already prepared for these types of things. And so I think we talked a couple weeks ago about hardening one of the layers and switching out your standard dictionary-based antivirus product for an AI-based EDR product that was smart and recognized a lot of other things going on rather than just exact matches for known viruses and known threats. The other thing that the product we were talking about was Sentinel-1. The other thing that Sentinel-1 does is it's got ransomware protection built right in.
Yeah.
And so that right here, let's say that one of these tools gets compromised, we've got ransomware rollback protection built into every endpoint. So yes, this still, like, let's say that this scenario happened to one of our tools. We may have a little bit of downtime at any of these points, but we're never going to be in a ransom situation. And so we've got checks to all of the tools at every endpoint. And but still, we want to recognize that this is still a threat to our community, but you cannot rely on any one tool or any one layer at any given time. And so your thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, especially with the ransomware rollback, that something like SentinelOne has is really good. Taking those extra layers for security is extremely helpful in these circumstances, and a lot of these companies didn't have that kind of stuff. One thing just to touch on, you had actually mentioned it when you were going over our evil. One layer of security we can start adding is just changing everyone's language packs to Russian. If we all learn Russian, we can go ahead and stop getting infected, because they did set up that stuff to not hit Russian specifically, so they're not hitting their own local authorities, they're just hitting us. So if we all learn Russian, I think we'll be good.
Well, that is a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned that. We're going to touch more on that in the next segment. If you would like to contact us, you may call 888-804-1MSP, email us at ithour@computeroptions.net, or follow us on Discord.
Contacts, calls, chat, and meetings with screen share, all accessible in one place. Now it's easy to work anywhere on any device with no friction. Brilliant! The smoothest communication and epic collaboration in one simple, unified tool. Save time, reduce costs, toss the fragmented tools, grow faster, get happier. Work instantly improves when communication and collaboration happens in one tool. Make calls, read voicemail, chat, have video meetings, and more, all on your browser. And all of this is instantly available with zero setup or configuration. It's business done better and the productivity solution you need. Talk to us today to learn what our proven UC solutions can offer your business. If you want peace of mind, call Telecommunication Solutions from California Computer Options at 800-804-1MSP. Hi, are you ready to join a well-established managed IT service company? California Computer Options in Redland, California is currently seeking full-time remote work for Level 1 technical consultants and small to medium-sized business network operations center engineer, Windows Systems Administrator. Please contact us at California Computer Options 909-793-6338, 909-793-6338.
Attention residents of the Inland Empire. If you or someone you know is shopping for a mortgage, turn to one of the fastest growing mortgage lenders in the Inland Empire, Arrowhead Capital Mortgage. We offer a variety of loan products and options to help you and your family get into the home of your dreams, and we make sure the process is easy. Don't miss out on these historically low interest rates. Call now, 909-335-0430, or go online to www.ac.mortgage. That's 909-335-0430 or www.ac.mortgage. NMLS ID 267884, Equal Housing Lender. Call for additional cost information. Other restrictions may apply.
And welcome back to IT Hour with Matt Creed and Brad McDermith. We'd also like to give a shout out to our producer and sound engineer, Mike Peacock. Thanks, Mike, for doing such a great job. And we're back with the Kaseya VSA attack, circling back to the biggest ransomware story of the week. Also, Matt, you know, as we've been talking about this, we want to remind our listeners that on December 13th of last year, FireEye discovered a supply chain attack while investigating the nation-state attack on its own Red Team toolkit and found that SolarWinds, one of the largest security tool providers, got hacked. So this is actually kind of the second large attack of this type.
Yeah.
So when SolarWinds was Trojanized and this happened, that was really the first large type of attack on a tool set. And we didn't mention that in the first segment, but I wanted to start this back by mentioning that SolarWinds was really the first large provider to be hit and attack the tool set. And that really just we can't emphasize enough why the layered approach is critical, and why continuing to look at this and look at each layer, checking the other layers, is just absolutely necessary here.
Oh yeah, and it really should be, if nothing else, to call the arms for any other platform that supports RMMs to really button your stuff up.
Absolutely, this is scary.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Matt. And were there any other way that organizations were affected?
Yeah, it's actually sad because on a multi-pronged front, they were getting hit. Not even just the people who were affected by the encryption, but Kaseya clients in general, or maybe even people who didn't realize that they didn't actually have Kaseya. You have these other organizations coming out with spear phishing emails, with malware, other encryption as well, posing as Kaseya, saying, hey, you need to come here and do these things to make sure that you're not being affected by this, and people fell for that as well. So not only are we getting hit with these ransomware attacks, but then other people are taking advantage of that and trying to hit you on other fronts as well.
So what providers can do is make sure that they've got ransomware rollback protection at every endpoint. Right now, for this specific attack, that is the check. That's the multi-layered approach.
Yeah, I think that's the big one, is ransomware rollback and ransomware protection in general, and then just ties into the other security layers, which we've already gone over quite extensively, including email security and having things like Barracuda Sentinel, not to be confused with Sentinel-1, where you have AI technology for spear phishing and stuff like that, and that would pick up on these kind of things as well.
Right, and of course patch management,
of course.
And all of the other layers. So you said something earlier, right at the end of the last segment. You said something about having all of our languages in Russian.
Oh yeah.
And we came across an article from NBC, and they pointed out that code in huge ransomware attack written to avoid computers that use Russian. It claims this new report. And so one of the things that we have been talking about in the past several shows is, and maybe this is kind of the elephant of the room, this seems really old, but the origin of all of this ransomware. I don't think that at this point it's any secret that it is the Russia or the former USSR block of countries. And so I want to point out this article. You're the one that found this. And this article is, I think, corroborating to the fact that it's Russia or former USSR countries, that whole Eastern Bloc is where all of this type of nefarious activity is coming from. And so I want to quote a little bit of this, and I think that I think we've got to do a little bit more of a deep dive on this to figure out what's going on. So the computer code behind the massive ransomware attack by the Russian-speaking hacking ring Ransom Evil was written so that the malware avoids systems that primarily use Russian or related languages, according to the new report by a cybersecurity firm. It's long been known that some malicious software includes this feature, but the report by Trustwave Spider Labs, obtained exclusively by NBC News, appears to be the first to publicly identify it as an element of the latest attack, which is believed to be the largest ransomware campaign ever. They don't want to annoy the local authorities, and they know that they will be able to run their business much longer if they do it this way, said the Trustwave Spider Labs Vice President of Security Research. Now, so what this is saying is that if they avoid the Russian languages, that they are not messing with their origin country businesses.
Yep.
So clearly we know the origin. Now, I think that we vowed in the very beginning of this show to be apolitical. But I think that we also like to call balls and strikes here.
Yeah.
And, we said from the very beginning that we don't really have any control over what our government does in terms of cybersecurity. So us, and when I say us, I mean California Computer Options, I mean our audience, I mean information technology providers, as well as internal IT departments, and I mean American IT in general. That's what I mean by us. We only have defense at our fingertips. So what we're trying to comment is defense. But the fact is our government at some point is going to have to say who these people are. And, I listened to the reporters asking the president again. Now we are at the umpteenth public high-value attack, and the president, for whatever reason, seems to say, well, we don't want to jump to conclusions on this being the Russians. I don't know how much more obvious it can get. So, NBC here is pointing out the fact that clearly it's the Russians, because they're trying to make sure that the ransomware doesn't even mess with Russian businesses. To me, that seems to be a clear indicator. I don't know about you.
No really beating around the bush on that one. I did read that the White House did eventually come out with a statement pretty much saying, like, look, Putin needs to come out and deal with the problems in his own backyard kind of thing, because we need to watch out for ours. That doesn't mean anything to me unless we actually do anything. And I mean, honestly, do you think they're going to do anything about that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, at some point, our government has to put pressure on their government to stop this as a flourishing industry in Russian and other Russian area, Russian controlled countries. Yeah. And if they don't, we're going to continue to have this as a growing, thriving industry that is going to be, incumbent 100% on us. So, I mean, definitely this show's not about advising the government on what they can do. Yeah. It's just on us keeping everyone updated on what they're not doing, I guess.
Essentially, yeah. And like you said, I mean, it's pretty straightforward where it's coming from at this point.
Well, I think we've definitely hit the nail on the head. That it's Russians, and so until it changes into other languages, we definitely know where it's coming from. Yep. And this article also lists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 different languages that are all Russian or Russian-esque. And the reason I used a number is because I couldn't pronounce all those different languages. And so those are the languages that are hard-coded, do not install list of countries that the Russian-based group has sort of whitelisted in terms of do not mess with those countries' businesses. Yeah. So definitely clear. So again, cyber terrorism worldwide is now a $6 trillion industry. And when it gets into those numbers, it makes defense and information technology, cybersecurity, obviously it makes our job huge. If it was dealt with on the national level, obviously it would be a huge partnership for us. Releasing the CISA white papers and documents, it's not even really helpful, because all they did was come to industry. They came to us, they found out what we were doing, and they put out a low bar. So, at this point, we're all on our own, and that's why we've got this show as a platform to put out best practices, preach the layered approach, and continue to keep it updated for our listeners so they understand what they need to do, and that they are truly on their own, and that the landscape is changing rapidly.
Yeah, and I mean we're hitting a point where a lot of these things we've been talking about this whole time, it's like, hey, this is optional protection to make sure you're secure from this kind of stuff, but we're at a point now where optional is not really an option anymore. It's pretty much essential.
Boy, you're exactly right. And, if you're skipping things or putting off things like multi-factor authentication and external facing mail, or your external access to your line of business application or your ERP, you are really running a risk. You are running around promiscuous without protection.
Yeah, we need to not be waiting for a point where, when you go reach out for cyber insurance, cyber liability insurance, that's when you're like, okay, these are the things I need to do. When you get cyber liability insurance, you want to have those things already done. And that's what, companies like us and your internal IT should already be doing at this point.
Well, and like we said in last week's show, we have been working with some of the top brokers in New York, and what they're telling us is that the underwriters, they are only insuring people or organizations that have checked off virtually all of the boxes, and you're only going to get an optimal premium if you have checked off all of the boxes, and that means all of the layers we're talking about, MFA on everything. And so if you want to be insurable, you better take IT seriously.
Yep.
Otherwise, you see what insurance companies are up against. They're looking at these stories all the time, and they have got to bring their risk surface down in order to in order to be able to be in business.
Yeah, and if they don't, they're going to be paying just as much as the companies are paying out. So it's
Absolutely. Well, this is what the boardrooms of America are talking about right now.
Yep.
And every time they see one of these stories, they're scared. And we've been included in a lot of these meetings, a lot of cyber insurance meetings, and a lot of boardroom meetings about cybersecurity. So let's talk about a couple other cyber insurance or cyber terrorism related stories. Here's new tricks on an old scam, macros. We've seen a lot of tricky things done with macros lately.
Oh, yeah.
So, Matt, hackers use a new trick to disable macro security warnings in malicious Office files. They're always trying something new. So tell us a little bit about how this new thing works.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting and kind of ties into why you need to have things like Sentinel Barracuda. Barracuda Sentinel rather, because inherently these definition-based detection that we have with the standard email quarantine, it looks at the email, and if there's nothing inherently wrong with it, it's going to let it go, plain and simple. And then what we're seeing with this is essentially what we get from the standard spear phishing, where the email goes through and nothing about it's bad, but then it says, hey, I need these gift cards, I need this money wired or something like that, and it's the person that gets it through. So what it's doing now is, instead of attaching a file that has a virus on it, it attaches a file that has nothing wrong with it, but that file itself, when opened, then calls to bring in the file that actually infects it, and then also disables Excel macro warnings and stuff like that. So we've hit this point where we're at a tiered approach, where we give you a file that nothing's wrong with the file itself, but then once you open that file then pulls in another file. We're in a whole loop of nonsense, but it just makes it that much easier to get through your standard quarantine.
So when we have AI-based mail security, and we have AI-based AV protection, that's where we need this type of smart learning and smart infection-based remediation. And so that's where constantly looking at these layers and either adding to them or upgrading them is incredibly important.
Oh yeah,
because these types of threats are changing. For years and years and years, we were looking for infected files with macros that it could just spot them. But now the macro doesn't even exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist in the original file itself. It's what comes after that. And that is a problem, especially me talking from an account manager perspective, is a lot of this AI software is relatively new. There is a higher cost associated to it, but we're going to see a point where people are going to realize we're going to go from definition being the standard to the AI being the standard. And that's that's just, are you going to be ahead of the curve or not?
Right, exactly. So this is a great example of why we're switching to AI-based smart technology.
Yep.
Well, that's about it for our time for this segment. But when we come back, we're going to talk about some other news examples and talk about more what's going on in the IT world. So for right now, if you'd like to contact us, you may call us at 888-804-1MSP. Email us at ithour@computeroptions.net or reach out and follow us on Discord.
Contacts, calls, chat, and meetings with screen share, all accessible in one place. Now it's easy to work anywhere on any device with no friction. Brilliant! The smoothest communication and epic collaboration in one simple, unified tool. Save time, reduce costs, toss the fragmented tools, grow faster, get happier. Work instantly improves when communication and collaboration happens in one tool. Make calls, read voicemail, chat, have video meetings, and more, all on your browser. And all of this is instantly available with zero setup or configuration. It's business done better and the productivity solution you need. Talk to us today to learn what our proven UC solutions can offer your business. If you want peace of mind, call Telecommunication Solutions from California Computer Options at 800-804-1MSP.
Attention residents of the Inland Empire. If you or someone you know is shopping for a mortgage, turn to one of the fastest growing mortgage lenders in the Inland Empire, Arrowhead Capital Mortgage. We offer a variety of loan products and options to help you and your family get into the home of your dreams, and we make sure the process is easy. Don't miss out on these historically low interest rates. Call now, 909-335-0430, or go online to www.ac.mortgage. That's 909-335-0430 or www.ac.mortgage. NMLS ID 267884, Equal Housing Lender. Call for additional cost information. Other restrictions may apply.
Hi, are you ready to join a well-established managed IT service company? California Computer Options in Redland, California is currently seeking full-time remote work for Level 1 technical consultants and small to medium-sized business network operations center engineer, Windows Systems Administrator. Please contact us at California Computer Options 909-793-6338, 909-793-6338.
And welcome back to IT Hour, where we are talking cybersecurity, ransomware attacks, and cyber terrorism here with Brad McDermith and Matt Creed. And boy, what a news-filled week it has been with cyber terrorism and a rapidly changing landscape. And so we are seeing a full-out assault on managed IT tools. We're seeing a full-out assault on high-value targets, and we're seeing the continual assault on everyday businesses and the regular low-value targets. I mean, it's a full broad spectrum of ransomware on American organizations and everything between. And then we've also established that there's absolutely no doubt that it comes from Russians, Russian-speaking countries, and other former USSR countries. We're also talking about other vulnerabilities and other cybersecurity related stories. And Matt, our cyber consultant here for the day and expert, is bringing some color into some of that. So Matt, got another story we want to highlight here. This one has been, this is at Microsoft's Print Spooler vulnerability, and this keeps popping back up. And this one's dubbed Print Nightmare. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, they need to be able to get remote access into your network first. So that's the first layer of protection you need to make sure you have set up, which hopefully at this point most people do. Especially if you don't already, make sure you don't have open RDP ports. That's kind of the first one you want to watch out for. But essentially, once they can get in, they can utilize the print spooler because it has kernel access all the way up to the AD level. So your Active Directory can be compromised, and once they can get into that, they can use the system user account with elevated privileges to get access to your AD, make any modifications, essentially hijack your network at that point. So it doesn't take much after they can get in to get access to everything very simply through that. And of course, Microsoft released a patch for this in June, and it's still a problem.
Yeah, go figure. Thanks a lot, Microsoft. I want to go back a step there when you talked about naked RDP or talked about open RDP ports. That's something we dealt with years ago.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or so. It was pretty common to just have ports like 3389 open on your firewall. So you could just RDP directly to your server, or RDP directly, had those mapped and directly to workstations so people could work remotely. Well, then that became like the number one attack vector.
Oh, yeah.
And you could get right in. So then we moved to connecting to a VPN and then connecting to RDP over VPN. And there essentially you kind of had 2FA.
Yeah.
And then they could no longer do that. That we have seen even now when we onboard a new customer, we find those open RDP ports.
All the time.
And that is about the lowest hanging fruit for hackers these days.
Oh, yeah. It's probably the easiest way to get into a network. And like you said, when we onboard clients, we still see it all the time. We took, even when I started here 5-6 years ago, that was like our number one security thing to eliminate. And we've made a very good point to make sure that's not the case anymore with existing clients and future clients. But yeah, it's so easy to get in through that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's incredible that people still to this day, with the type of cyber threats that we have, do not know what ports are open and vulnerable on their firewall.
Oh yeah,
their hardware firewall. I mean, that's the number one thing that needs to be addressed and reviewed in any network, and that's the first thing that we do when we're doing an IT assessment is what does the firewall configuration look like?
Yeah, and it's not even just business, home users too. I mean, you're just as much vulnerable you're more vulnerable even than an actual company because you don't have all these extra layers of security on top of that. It's real easy to be like, oh, I need to get my computer from home, hop on YouTube. Oh, there's this thing called port forwarding. Let me set this up because it's easy enough to do. And they don't realize what they're opening themselves up to.
Right. Very good point. And so getting back to Print Nightmare and this Microsoft Print Spooler vulnerability, this is really where patch management is incredibly important. So when we have a whole team of people that just deal with patch management here at California Computer Options. And so we don't just approve every patch and send it out because we know that Microsoft is notorious for sending out patches that actually cause new problems and don't necessarily fix or patch the known vulnerability. And this is case in point right here. Their patch didn't even fix the known vulnerability. And we have seen, especially with server level patches and stuff, where maybe it addresses the vulnerability, maybe it doesn't, but maybe it breaks the service that it's supposed to be fixing. Maybe it breaks SQL, maybe it breaks Exchange, maybe it breaks any other number of services, and you've got other issues. So we do a couple different types of things. Number one, for a lot of security patches or a lot of other application patches, we do what's called a cooling off period. We are constantly looking through forums to find out if there's any unknown effects or adverse effects from the patches. And if they're 0 day patches, obviously we're much more in tune with that. But we want to make sure that that the fix is not worse than or the cure is not worse than the original item or vulnerability to begin with.
Yeah, and like you said, historically, Microsoft has proven that it typically can be way worse than the actual fix itself. So that it's essential to run those kind of patch management ideals.
Right. And so this Microsoft print spooler vulnerability is definitely not a one-off. These types of things happen a lot. And this is really why IT management is not a set it and forget it thing.
No.
It requires constant monitoring and constant management, and patch management is a critical component, a critical layer of your managed security. So moving on, we've got another story in the stack of stuff here, where experts uncover malware attacks targeting corporate networks in Latin America. And the reason that we want to highlight this story is because it's very interesting where these attack vectors come from and the amount of manipulation and control that this specific malware takes on. Cybersecurity researchers on Thursday took the wraps off a new ongoing espionage campaign targeting corporate networks in Spanish-speaking countries, specifically Venezuela, to spy on its victims. Dubbed Bandidos by ESET, owing to the use of an upgraded variant of Bandook malware, the primary targets of the threat actor are corporate networks in the South American country, spanning across manufacturing, construction, healthcare, software services, and retail sectors. Now, Matt, this is another example of malware getting in undetected, and I think also the lack of AI and the lack of some more sophisticated layered approach in lesser developed countries here let this sneak in undetected. Color this in for us.
Yeah, so essentially same premise with what we were talking about before. It's just instead of a Word file going into Excel, it's a PDF. So there's nothing inherently wrong with the PDF itself. It's once you open the PDF, that then pretty much downloads a RAR file, which extracts out and injects itself into Internet Explorer, good old Internet Explorer. And from there, it pretty much sets up all kinds of extensions and stuff where it can monitor your usage and report that back to whoever sent the attack. But yeah, same premise where it's like, look, the file that comes in isn't the problem. It's what happens after you open the file, and that stuff can get through sometimes, which only promotes the value of AI technology in the future.
Right. And, the malicious extension tries to retrieve any credentials that the victim submits to the URL, and they're stored in Chrome's local storage. And, the things that this allows the bad guys to be able to do is incredible. And, just our layered approach and the things that we've been talking about would have kept them safe from all of this. And the fallout from this is just, the scale of it is incredible. We're talking about countries here.
Oh, yeah. And this just goes to show there's so many different aspects they can attack you from, and they are, and they're even attacking you from the attack that they've already done. It's just there's so many different layers that you have to have. Having one thing protected is not going to solve you from being protected from everything. It's just you got to have these layers set up so you're ready to go.
That's right. Now, the sort of the fundamental difference between this story and the ones that we covered earlier is the goal of this was espionage and not money.
Yeah.
And now it may all come back to money in the end, but
at the end of the day,
yeah, gold seems to rule the world here. But in this case, espionage was at least the surface objective.
Yeah.
So, but again, these taking the turn of getting through the legacy layers because they're seemingly benign, and then but they are bad in the end, and they're able to fool the system.
Yeah.
And so again, listening to our tips, hardening these layers the good guys can prevail here. And I think, Matt, during the last break, the White House called you and gave you an update.
Yeah. I was definitely sitting in on the phone call with Biden and Putin on that one, but essentially they actually just had a phone call pretty much shortly after we were talking about it. They must have heard us.
Well, they are avid listeners of this show.
They must be, right?
That's where they get their CISA documentation.
But essentially, yeah, he supposedly had a phone call with him and It apparently went well. We'll see what that actually equates to. But told them, hey, look, if you don't take care of your stuff, we're gonna have to take action on it. But again, until I see something.
Okay, well, you heard it on this show. Our president has done some hardline talking about Russia needing to do something.
Yeah.
So we will see what that equates to.
Which is interesting because all Russia's ever done is deny that they had anything to do with this. But apparently one phone call and they're like on board with taking care of everything. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, well, in the meantime, I think our official recommendation is don't let your security guard down and don't let your layered approach down until we see something happen on the international front.
And I mean, at the end of the day, let's go best case scenario here. That one call turns everything around and Russia decides to actually crack down on this. Somebody else is going to take the reins.
You're exactly right.
It doesn't matter. Even if we solve it with one country, it's still going to be a problem.
Then it's going to be China.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going to be China, and then it's going to be someone else. And it's if there's money to be made, someone's going to do it.
You are exactly right. Follow the money. That is a great point. So either way, we're not going to be off the hook from having this defensive posture.
Yeah, it might make our government look better to the people, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be a problem. You need to have the infrastructure either way to support this stuff from happening.
Agreed. Yeah, and that's the risk of freedom on the internet. Yep. And the risk that we take. But, every year that we move along, organizations are getting a lot more functionality out of technology. They're getting a lot more functionality out of the internet. And with 5G and growth in infrastructure and connectivity, it's a lot faster now.
Oh, yeah.
And so, it's kind of hard to realize that. I think organizations don't even realize, especially with IoT, how much more they're really getting out of it. Well, this has been a great discussion on cybersecurity and the ransomware landscape. Unfortunately, we're out of time. If you are responsible for information technology in your organization and you've got questions about your IT security, please give us a call at 1-888-804-1MSP. You can email us at ithour@computeroptions.net or follow us on Discord. Here's wishing you best practices for a better IT experience.
This has been IT Hour on KMET 1490 AM. Join us each week Wednesdays at 4 p.m. You can email us at ithour@computeroptions.net or join us on Discord by going to kmet1490am.com, head over to the IT Hour show, and click on the Discord link. Thank you for listening, and here's wishing you best practices for a better IT experience.